Blessed love and peace. It is the next day, another day, a day. Haha. And so I'm in the midst. Actually, it's 6 a.m. Um, got some sleep. Didn't sleep much yesterday after the situation because we stay up through the night just for basic security purposes. Then we go out and carry on with the rest of the errands intended initially for the day to begin with. Now it's successful. Okay. So that's the past 24 hours. Then today, after having a considerable amount of coffee late, after not getting sleep the night before, or getting much sleep the day of, coffee, and then we get some sleep. Then we wake up and like, oh, let's clip the joint up. So that's what I'm actually in the process of doing. I got the iMovie rolling and it just finished up the initial joint. So I did a long version and now I'm about to do, God willing, a short version. But whilst waiting for the joint to do it, to save up and everything, I figure we do the assessment situation here at the moment about like an initial review or assessment, intermediate interim assessment about the incident from yesterday, the smash up situation. Um, so, I mean, just look like assessing facts, assessing the circumstances. We look at actors. We could say perpetrators, but we are utilizing the term actors, endeavoring to be as kind of objective and just like methodic and just honest and just observing conditions rather than getting too emotional, making too much um, 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 too quick, too presumptuous conclusions. Um, so, uh, uh, acknowledging actors, the direct actors, acknowledging the methodology, how what is done, acknowledging the planning and intentionality, acknowledging the indirect actors, kinfolk who are involved, who are orchestrating, who are commanding orders, who have motivation, who are observing or sitting idly or colluding, and then also looking at motivations and intentions about like what the situation is. I just said a lot of categories, but just I mean those are some of the basic elements in this consideration. So here we go. Actors, like I said, there's two brethren in the vehicle, young, look like maybe early mid 20s, and of African ancestry, driving in a low income vehicle. Could have been stolen, could have been somebody's borrowed thing or whatever else. It looked like a Toyota, small, like compact sedan type situation. Um, so, a few just basic observance of the immediate actors, the direct actors, without getting into too much detail at the moment, because addressing additional components of the methodology and planning and additional participants and planners, because the details factor into each other when putting it all together. So rather than getting any detail at the media point, like addressing all the components generally and then going further into detail was whatever is appropriate or prudent at this moment. So those are the actors, two young men of African ancestry, mid 20s, thereabouts. Some basic characteristics that are observed is, brother has got to have skill to do that, to drive through that, have the heart to do that, be like mindful not to get too, not to get too emotional or volatile or hyped or whatever else. It was very methodic, not getting loud in terms of vocalization, even when I'm there in addressing the brethren. Like I said before, they might have been talking to me directly, and the response was saying, yeah, they could have been just talking to each other, not responding to me at all, but still talking in a low voice, methodic, kind of like coordinating. And during the whole process, no yelling or anything like that, discipline. So brethren have skill. and driving too, to be able to to do the maneuvering. That takes a kinfolk who has some experience in doing driving, whether it's like stealing cars, whether it's ride situations or whatever. But they've got driving skills to be calm, to have the confidence of carrying out that mission, um, and to get out without any like clap back at me, either verbally or otherwise. That's discipline. That's a skill set, driving skill set, but also like a behavioral skill set. So that's not just knuckleheads doing stupid shit. That's planned, orchestrated, um, 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 mission. So, and also discipline, because like there's a specific objective for whatever reason or whatever purpose it's supposed to serve. There's a specific objective, and just stay on that. Don't respond. Don't get caught up. Do the work, do the job, and get out. That's it. That's what was done. That's discipline right there. That's orchestration. That's methodic. And even when it's young kinfolk, it's young kinfolk with some training and some skill to do that. They're part of. They got a boss situation going on, and they're focusing on what the task at hand is. So that's discipline in terms of that behavior, but it's also discipline in the skill set of being able to drive. That was not an easy angle to hit the sukkah, to hit the vehicle, and then to go on and hit the sukkah and push it against the garage over there. So that was not an easy thing. That takes skill, and not only that. Well, now we're getting to methodology at some point. So all right, that's skill wise. So I've finished that side of the assessment for the moment. Get into the methodology. Very methodic. This was something planned out, and this is probably something planned out with somebody, not just with skill, but with the mindset to do this. So it wasn't the brethren that are the actual actors, because um, the people, the boss, whatever, there are levels of bosses too in this situation, in what we're involved with, just generally speaking. And the boss levels get very high in this respect. So they're not the bosses. They're the soldiers. Um, and so the planning of this, and again, it's not high level planning, so to speak. However, it does take like some next level type of thinking. So first of all, kinfolk didn't come from the driveway or the parking lot, because I see there are two entrances here, and I can see from both. I don't. One entrance is directly visible from my line of sight from right here at the window, just by happenstance. I can see things from the periphery comparably simply, so I can see a majority of the parking lot here. The first entrance that's closer to where I am is actually less visible immediately, but I can still see the cars that drive from that direction, because I can see the parked cars that are on this side of the parking lot. So when a car is coming up, I can see it coming in that respect, basically. This is something that's methodic, knowing that people know, this is something that's known. People know this already. People regularly walk underneath the sidewalk intentionally to avoid being seen by me. People walk underneath the sidewalk and then walk directly out in front of the window, perpendicular into the parking lot, and stand there to let it be seen that, yo, we were just here and now you see us, and then now you don't. So people know about that. People know the blind side of this situation, and that's where the vehicle came from. It was blindside. I can't see the tree line too tough from just sitting here. If I stand up and look over, I can see it. But from this side, um, the tree line is outside of the periphery here, and that's where the car came up. They came up quiet, and then it was only till they get into that angle that they read the engines. So that's planning. Not only that, like if it's just a matter of smashing the sukkah, and initially, didn't know if they were trying to not be seen at all. There's surveillance. We don't control the surveillance, but there is surveillance here. Um, so they don't seem to be too concerned about that, because they did it. And it's not avoided even by coming through that sideways. So the consideration is going that it takes a lot of effort to drive through the tree lawn between the telephone pole and the tree, to get at the angle. And that's not it's a difficult angle. There's a parked vehicle immediately less than like half a meter, a foot away from the sukkah. So it takes very like skillful maneuvering, even just in still hitting the van, um, the minivan that's right next to the sukkah, to get to the sukkah. And that's the confidence. This is presumed like the better than getting at the kinfolk who have the minivan. It's actually us. Um, So, and it's knowing that, and it's anticipating it, and having the skill to knock the minivan out the way to get to the sukkah. That is skill set, driving skill set, with a mini, with a small compact sedan. It takes a skill set to push that minivan out the way, and then to crash the sukkah against the garage, the adjacent garage wall. That's skills, and it's planning to discern the efficacy of that, and particularly when it would be much simpler if one's going to be detected anyways, or if one's going to be expected to be detected and seen. It's much easier to just drive through the courtyard here, and just hit the sukkah directly. There are two basic angles. One coming from the perpendicular, and it would be just a straight on hit. Um, and then the other would be coming from right here, parallel, to where we are here, and then it would still be an awkward angle, but it would still be much further accessible directly than the line that was taken. So it's presumed that one of the reasons why the line was taken is that it was less visible from my immediate periphery, and knowing that ahead of time and planning that accordingly, and employing somebody who has the skill to carry that out accordingly. And this might seem all very intricate for the purposes of just like a smash thing, but it's levels here, and the implications are significant worldwide. And who, yeah, the delusions of grandeur, whatever, but yo, wake the fuck up and recognize. So that's the nature of things today. So that's, and it doesn't take, I mean, it takes some mindfulness, and it takes some skill set. And I'm just articulating, it might sound very much further intricate than the actuality of actually doing it. So, anyways, that's some of the methodology of like how it was, and it's orchestrated. Like, this is something that was planned ahead of time, not just in terms of like the carry out, but um, like knowing who we are, where we're coming from, what we do, to plan it accordingly along those lines. Um, because it would have been much simpler just to come again either perpendicularly right and then smash it against this building side, or to come parallel and then still cut it at an angle and then hit it against the garage wall accordingly. But presumably there was some type of significance in terms of sneaking up underneath the periphery here. Um, and again, not uncertain whether kinfolk thought they were going to be seen at all or try to get out before they were seen. But it didn't seem to make that much of a difference because they were not. They were seen. How much they thought that it could have been, like we might have been able to like intercede in seeing the kinfolk beforehand, like lining up and everything else like that. However, if it's that type of planning, and additionally, it could be easily like just kinfolk just get into the parking lot, kind of be nonchalant or whatever, and then when it comes time to actually hitting it, then just like gunning it right there, and by the time it's seen, like it's done just like it was already. So um, there seems to be some type of intentionality of just like being further secretive and being hidden and trying to like get underneath the skin of it being hidden, of it, this sense of uneasiness about you can't see us coming, da 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 da. So there's that. Now, and that's gets into like the objective. We talk about actors, we talk about methodology, now we get into like the objective. Like what's the point? We can talk about maybe again scaring, setting a message, communicating like increasing levels of hostility and warnings and otherwise, intimidation, distraction from the other things that are going on. Um, and to be honest, the way the cosmos works and the way the Most High works, it's like showing evidence of exactly what we're talking about. I'm talking at them literally at that moment about the hostilities and patience, and we're here for we love everybody, but at the same time we have to stand up for ourselves and da 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 da. And it may seem belligerent, and as I'm mentioning all of that, literally at that moment, here comes an example of the aggression and the hostilities that we experience on a regular basis, showing our point, I should say, showing what we're talking about. And that's actually like it's showing us, it's showing what we're talking about. Um, so there's that objective of okay, let's give the kinfolk some evidence of what the kinfolk are going through. So it's like that ironic and angelic kind of exhibition. Um, We got the air show, and now we got the ground show. The street show. So the objectives. So like I said, within the ambiguity and like the passive aggressiveness at the surface level, again, it can be just like a retaliation for things that we've communicated recently. It can be a warning of like further aggressions and intentionality. It could be some kind of just expression of frustration and whatever, and just like, oh, we're tired of hearing that guy. We want some clapback and some vengeance. We want some quote unquote justice or whatever else, because we just feel like he's just too, or they're just too uppity, or they're too this and they're the other. So we want them to feel some hurt and make ourselves feel better. So even kinfolk who are extremely intelligent and planning things still have very don't want to insult it by calling infantile minds, but very immature emotionality in terms of insecurities, and additionally in resorting to dumb shit as a way of trying to feel better about themselves. Genius intelligence and everything else, but still resorting to those type of tactics. It's the world. It's the way of the world. And all right. So objective can be from just again punishing, warning, or whatever else. So then we get into like again who the usual suspects are. What's the motivation? What's some of the longer term or bigger kind of like perspective kind of situations going on here? So basically focus on facts here, and without drawing too many undue conclusions at the moment. So I mentioned many of the usual suspects, generally specifically in the previous recordings in the past day. Do a review. So one, we got a direct warning pertaining the LGBTQ community. We've sent we've been doing this for over a year at this point, and we've gotten some clapback already through further passive aggressive things. Again, fake summons to courts and stuff like that, which is serious. Like impersonating a police officer, that's even next level impersonating a court and judge and an official order. And even if in the scenario that is actually issued by a judge, it's all bullshit. So if in that situation it is issued by a judge, that's even worse, because that's showing how corrupt and volatile the conditions are of the society here. So either way, it's direct response to things that we communicate. And what we're talking about is the rainbow swastikas that are in the crosswalks going to the school, the public school here, where 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old children have to walk to school. It's an imposition of a religiosity, a belief system, an ideology, a politics of sexual deviance, directly communicated and imposed upon children. And the rest of the community just is watching it, because the rest of the community is just caught up in so much of their own bullshit. They don't have the strength to call it out and protect their own children, our own children. So when we do that, now we're getting the clap back, because this is part of what it is. Now, that's one element. So we've done that. We've shared, just in the past week, we've shared correspondence, and we've gotten warnings direct to us about the response, the hostility for communicating those things. That's directly communicated to us. So that's one suspect, LGBTQ. Another suspect is Little Italy, as I've communicated before. There's the racist smoke shop engine that it's outside the cigar shop. We've addressed that through the years. We've gotten stopped on the streets here in the village, asked about it and further, and then in those conversations, still further disrespect, and now it's elevated because we haven't even said anything, done anything for months, and keeping a distance proactively because we're just not trying to get caught up. We got other things going on, but now we're being stopped and we're being approached, and then in doing that, it's still going on. So then we got to come back and be like, yo, no. And now that the next day, a few weeks ago, we got a situation right here at the window. So that's another suspect. Little Italy. Third suspect is the black community. Now, we haven't gotten any warnings. We haven't got any threats or anything, any vocal hostilities towards us specifically. However, the conditions are somewhat different because, first of all, in many ways, we're much further close with the black community because of our history and our activity, and additionally, our cooperations. And further, the situation is that in recent years, I mean, it's a long-standing thing for generations, but particularly within recent years, there's this mixed black thing, and mixed people aren't saying anything at black people. To be generally speaking, to our knowledge, like we're not saying anything. We're not clapping it or taking shots at the black community, but the black community, a number of kinfolk, leadership, and very like supported leadership that we actually have affinity to and support in many ways as well, are taking shots at the mixed community. General, just categorical. Some of it's through the guise of specific individuals, but it's like all y'all kind of situation. And when that's the situation, like, hold up, nah. And the fact that many kinfolk are also silent, we love all black kinfolk, we love all kinfolk, and we know not all black kinfolk think that way. However, at the same time, when nobody's saying anything to balance that and to put it in check, and still are supporting the leaders that are taking those shots, now we gotta like be mindful of this at this point. So things don't change at this point. And one of the things is that black folk who speak out, and we're talking about particularly militant black folk, the strength within the black community, which is very much needed, and has to have that kind of like, yo, it's us. But at the same time, taking shots at particularly at mixed people that are out of pocket, facts, 100% facts out of pocket. When that happens, and it's not anything new actually, but the thing about it is that black folk aren't accustomed to mixed folk standing our ground with credibility and strength and countering that, because very often through the years, through the generations, mixed folk have basically been rather, I don't want to say docile, however, haven't had that strength and fortitude to be like, no, fuck that, shut the fuck up, with credibility, with cred, with black cred. Usually mixed folk are sellouts and are very leveraged in assimilating in a white culture, and so don't have the individual fortitude to speak in that way, and they have to rely upon the white infrastructure to provide that kind of balance or whatever else. So usually it's not mixed folk coming and saying, yo, shut the fuck up talking about white folk, not shut the fuck up talking about mixed people like that, or anybody, but like, yo, shut the fuck up. Black folk aren't used to black folk are not used to mixed folk standing on our own too in that way, and not relying upon white folk for support or backup, calling the police or whatever else. And the expectation, the conditioned behavior amongst black folk who are being that militant and like throwing mixed folk under the bus, the expectation is for mixed folk who are black, who identify as black or within the realm of blackness, to just absorb the shade. Just take it, know your place, bow down type of situation. That's what it is. Either sell out and get away from us, or if you're going to be accepted in our fold, just take it and don't say anything back. But when mixed folk do say something back and aren't going the sellout route, that's somewhat, we're in uncharted territories at this point, to be honest. Now that the reason for all that is this, saying this. So we are not hating on nobody, no black folk, nobody. We receive shade indirectly from the general statements that black folk make towards mixed people, black leadership makes towards black people, and the silence of anybody in the black community saying anything of commensurate balance with that. So because of that, we say things directly to and about the leadership that are saying this hate. and that can ruffle a lot of further feathers. And so that's what the conditions are now. All that being said, nothing has been said to us directly because kinfolk who know who we are, what we're about, what we've done, what our badges are, what our cred is, and additionally, we're pieces of shit. We're no better, no worse than anybody else. But kinfolk who know that. We haven't had anything directly communicated at us or about us from the black community. It's with us. Well, now I can't say it's all been love. Anybody who's done shade with us, towards us, has been in our face and has been in a context of something. It hasn't been threatening. It's been like diplomacy, and so. But in terms of like threats or warnings or anything else like that, we haven't had any direct warnings. We haven't had any innuendos that we can register. So but it's the conditions. There are conditions, general conditions of hostility, and it don't take warning because how black folk work, it can happen like that without warning. So that's the situation. When the conditions are such where there's like just latent static, it doesn't have to be a warning. It doesn't have to be innuendos or whatever, because it's less a matter of passive aggressive type stuff. It's further direct. So, anyways, this is in that kind of scenario of the black community doing this. This would be like a further incremental step of like increasing aggression rather than like a big entity doing a passive aggressive kind of thing. So anyways, that's another suspect. We got LGBTQ, we got Little Italy, we got the black community, particularly black nationalism and kinfolk like that. Jewish Federation, facts. We've received warnings. We've received threats. I've talked before about the Jewish Federation being accused of issuing a court order of having me detained physically and tortured physically, facts, a few years ago whilst residing in this domicile. So that's the history of violence and threats, because we have a sign on out our window that is saying peace, getting those threats based upon that. So that's the history. Even within the past year, we received threats of forced removal from this domicile, and additionally from the Jewish Federation. So that's another suspect. Now, that being said, since those communications are made within the past year, there's also been a rescinding and there's been actually even reconciliation and agreements made in the past year or so. However, there's also been some violations of the agreement. So then when that happens, after like we make peace and like I say, okay, we're copacetic, then there's a violation of that afterwards on the part of the Jewish Federation. Then it's like, well, hold on, nah. Okay, then that's off then. So, but that's where things stand, because part of the difficulty of the Jewish Federation is like the Jewish Federation just has extreme difficulty just like talking to us as equals, because in doing that, it's just like accepting status and recognition of what we do, and that has extreme implications and ramifications just in terms of societal level, contracts, prices, and additionally even just acknowledging the same levelness of another side. So without that, it's just a matter of like avoiding and just like the silence of the lambs types of things, of like just like pretending something is not what it is, and that is the passive aggressive type of situation. So that being said, there's been a history of violence and threats from Jewish Federation in recent years. There's been recent threats in the past year. There's been communication of reconciliation and discontinuation of those threats and copacetic arrangements, but then there's been violations, smaller violations of that understanding and that agreement. And since then, there's been distance, there's been quiet for like many months, generally speaking. So it's generally copacetic in that respect, but at the same time, that's been the surface level, and there's many different mechanisms of doing things. And there's also the propensity of immediacy of doing things, of just just doing something comparatively expediently. So anyways, that's another suspect. A main suspect, as I said before, is the pedophiles, the Greco-Roman cults. And that's when we're getting further up into the societal situation of like the owners of buildings, the coalitions, kinfolk who are in the mechanics of the political machinery of local and federal government, even international government, where the stakes are higher, where the things that we communicate have further um, vibration and ramifications, even when people don't want to acknowledge that and admit it. And so get clapped back through different channels. And additionally, so those are some of like the major suspects, usual suspects. Um, and the thing is, again, as I mentioned before, when hiring black kinfolk, young black kinfolk, to be the soldiers. Um, oh, one other community that's appropriate to mention, particularly because we're talking about a sukkah amidst geopolitical conditions. Haven't even talked about this too much, but it's the Muslim community, whether it's like the organized Arab, Sunni, Shia Muslims, brethren, or whether it's the Black Muslim or otherwise, or coalition of any of one of these factions or groups. Um, that's another suspect just because of the circumstances, and we do get stopped in the whole Israel-Palestine thing. We keep a distance from that. We walk a spiritual path, and so we have relations with all sides and respect and love for all sides, and so that could be perceived as betrayals on any one side. But given the conditions and the fact that we wear tzitzit and we have a sukkah here, people can, even when people know better, people can still make accusations and get puffy up or whatever, and utilize these things as a pretense for hostilities or otherwise. So even when they know very much what we're about, or even done prayed and performed salat and otherwise with us. That being said, that's that we just have to include that as a suspect. Now, again, similar to the black community, we haven't had any direct threats or hostilities communicated from the Muslim community categorically. But again, it doesn't have to be, because it can be kinfolk who don't know us, newcomers, outsiders, or whatever else, who don't care about us too tough or about a relationship with us, and just resort towards those entrenched lines, binaries, and impose some type of like, oh no, we got to do something about this, da da da. That's the most dangerous type, the friendly type, da 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 da. That rationale type of situation, and so, and then employing local kinfolk or whatever. And anyway, so just have to recognize that as another suspect. Even though we haven't had any direct threats or otherwise to us specifically, we have been stopped through activists, but activists that they're not even Muslim, and that's part of the challenge as well, because it becomes cloudy of just people jumping on bandwagons and ad hoc coalitions and allyship and whatever else. And amidst all the volatility, it's an election season. So things just get further contentious and all the different types of stuff, which is what I said before. We keep a distance. We're not citizens. We're not involved in the political process of elections or whatever else, campaigns. We are withdrawn from convention. We don't do ownership. We're not citizens. We're not worrying about money. And so, like, a lot of those things that people get motivated about and contentious about, we keep a distance as much as possible. But when it comes to like articulating what the conditions are, people don't want truth being known too tough or whatever else. So then that becomes a point of contention and hostility. So those are some of the usual suspects, and those are some of the intrinsic motivations that I've described for each of those suspects, basically. And so, like, doing an assessment of the situation at the moment, what we observe, and like some kind of presumption or working conclusion, basically is this: a coalition. It's a coalition of the usual suspects, because that's the nature of how things are, and it's kind of like kinfolk, like checking off, like when this is not as an exact comparison or example, but like in Training Day, when Denzel's character had to like get the okay to push a button on one of his collars or whatever, and as a pretense for getting that money that the collar has, he has to get his okays. He got to check off here, got to go to what he said, the three wise men or whatever. But it's kind of that situation, and so even when cult factions within a society are at each other and competing fiercely against each other, um, there's also a collusion of keeping that game going, because all of the factions of this society have a vested interest in keeping the United States going. Jews, Muslims, blacks, whites, kinfolk across the board have a vested interest in keeping the pirate ship floating. And anybody who's talking against the pirate ship, is a collective motivation to address that. And so, all right. Part of also the way that the pirate ship works is that, again, the hierarchy of it gets further corrupt, and particularly pedophiles, um, cannibals, and additionally, are the much of the puppeteers, puppet masters. Now, cannibals and pedophiles are still themselves puppets, because everybody's answer to a further boss. Um, However, the point here is that, um, that culture, the occult and the pedophiles and the cannibals, owners of buildings, the titans of convention, work through LGBTQ, work through Little Illy, as I've said before. Little Illy is not its own self at this point. And so even when we call Little Illy punks, and additionally, there is truth to that, but it's not intended as an antagonism. And that's not a condescending kind of like qualification, but it's a matter of recognizing that Little Illy is not itself. Little Illy is a victim of gentrification, of LGBTQ and the pedophiles and the cannibals coming in with big money and moving the ethnic Italian American community out of Little Italy and out of itself, and kind of like flexing, like, what you gonna do about it? And then Little Italy not only feels some type of way and wants to like make itself feel better because of what's going on, but is like employed to do that, because the big money kinfolk that are coming in and taking over Little Italy are employing Little Italy. Says, if you don't want us to do it even worse, we want you to do this. So it's levels to the game, and a lot of the ethnic groups, and additionally within the United States, are at the lower levels, and within that hierarchy, and in many ways are doing the bidding. And even when a community, people might talk about the Jewish community, like, oh, the Jewish community is not anybody's puppet. They get the responsibility. Yes and no. Because there are elements within the Jewish community that are very much the puppetry of other entities, because many kinfolk in the Jewish community are not that observant, are very entrenched and dependent upon the trappings of convention, money, status, credentials of convention, in order to be influential even within the Jewish community. And so when that's the pretense of self-valuation and stability within life, then that's beholden to those who hold those strings: employment, money, and additionally, and that's again increasingly pedophilia, cannibalism, and further types of corruption, the occult, the Greco-Roman occult, and additionally. So, but at the same time, as many people perceive, like, there is a certain amount of autonomy within the Jewish community, where the sense of self and the value and the stability, and the power, or the foundation of negotiation with others, is not predicated upon a convention. It's predicated upon another thing that the Jewish community brings to the table. Same thing with the Muslim community, and additionally. So the point is that even when it's distinct from the Little Italy circumstance and scenario, and it's not necessarily categorically kowtowing to the conventional corruption, there's still a certain necessity of working with that corruption and kind of agreeing to certain things, not agreeing to certain things, or otherwise. And so there's a collusion that's involved amidst the different factions and syndicates and otherwise cartels. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a collusion. Because to be honest, like I said, in that scenario of walking here, or driving through straight from the parking lot and then crashing the sukkah, if that's what the objective is, there's a much further expedient, practical, and assured way of doing that, which is going right and hitting at the building. But doing it that way would signal a threat, an increasing threat of damage to this building. There's windows on this side of the building, and additionally, that could easily be broken in that process, as opposed to doing it against the garage wall on perpendicular to this building. And so the methodology of this act that was done, the violence, I'm not going to say it's violence because it's a building, and even when if it's meant as being threatening and intimidating, we have to recognize its materiality and is intended and designed that way. So we have to be careful about how we equate violence towards objects, towards violence, towards life. So even in this act of vandalism, let's say, well, that's a derogatory term towards vandals. In this act of aggression, there, even in its planning and orchestration, it's orchestrated in such a way that it doesn't cause damage to this building, which is an intrinsic collusion, whether directly or indirectly, with the Jewish Community, Jewish Federation that claims stewardship, ownership, management of this building. So if it's a situation of the syndicate planning it together and Jewish Federation, well, just don't do it against this building. Come on, save us on us damage, whatever else. Or if it's whoever the actual direct orchestrators are doing it with the Jewish Federation in mind and saying, well, yeah, we don't want to step on those toes. Do it against the garage wall. It's still collusion. And that's a strong legal argument to make. But when all the members that are said here are part of the pirate ship in terms of citizenship, in terms of monies, in terms of having a vested interest and dependency on the systemic functioning of corruption within the society, it very much is collusion. And anticipating not stepping on toes, and additionally, is even when competing and vying very severely against each other, again, when that type of orchestration is planned to account for the interest and the diplomacy of other entities for the sake of continuing the pyramid of corruption, that is intrinsic systemic collusion. Anyway, so that's part of it. We are a part of it too. As we participate in the infrastructure, the electricity, the signals, the hardware, and additionally, so it's further degrees of separation, but we're still involved in it as well. But anyways, those are some of the main usual suspects. I would like to pray. Prayer is all right. Sun is getting up now. The smile is beginning today. Those are some of the main usual suspects, some of the rationale concerning those suspects. And again, this is just communicated with as much kind of just a matter of factedness, objectivity, and just like just honesty as possible without malice. I think that, I know, Woodpecker. I ain't got no food right now. I know. All right, I gotta work on this. I got groceries to get. How about that? I got some things to do. So we addressed the corruption. We were very specific. We're not hating on anybody. We're not vilifying anybody. We're not calling upon violence against anybody. We're not even when we talk about death, like the consequences of things being done to us, and the consequences being painful death. We're not wishing that on anybody. We're not threatening that on anybody. We are communicating to people the seriousness of these conditions and the consequences of that without us having to do it, understanding that this is what is done beyond our own will, volition, or control. We are communicating the conditions and the cause and effect so that people can be further sober, because it's just facts. This society is so entrenched within a culture of a lack of consequence. Much of the leadership and people of this society live for many generations to this day with a very strong perception and belief of not having of there not being any consequences for causing atrocities, death, torture, pain, affliction, injustice on other people. And have like got this, like this, don't want to call it insane, but just this delusion of no consequence, of invincibility, of like these lives do not, I mean, Black Lives Matter is a cliche and it's a meaningless bullshit, but it's actually based on the fact that people actually don't think the lives matter and continue to this day with that thought. And the thing is that kinfolk are, one of the reasons why that is because kinfolk have just been so hollowed out. And I don't want to be too accusatory or whatever else, but the basics of it is this. And one of the reasons why we articulate it in such a stark way, it's because of this. There are many people in this life, in this world, in this day, who only care about two things: pleasure and pain. Only care about experiencing pleasure and minimizing pain, not experiencing pain. One's own pain and one's own pleasure. And that's it. Existential notions about empathy, compassion, cooperation, otherwise, don't care about that. How is this going to make me feel nice? And in that experience of pleasure and pain, don't care about consequences, about what other people are experiencing, as long as they don't have to experience it themselves. Thus, within that mindset, it's a matter of articulating the consequences of the actions that people are doing, so that even in the articulation, people have to, and we're talking about people with like still strong minds, genius minds even, to do very intricate plots and plannings and engineerings. And additionally, people, when confronted with this articulation, have to think about two things. One, death, and death signifying no further pleasure. Some people don't care about pain. Some people don't even care about themselves. Well, we're talking about a number of different kind of constituencies here. So just to be plain and simple here, one of the main reasons why we articulate what we do is to provide people with some sobriety, and be increasingly awake and honest about what people are doing and what the consequences are. For those who just care about pleasure and don't care what they do or who is hurt in that acquisition of pleasure, it is a matter of articulating that eventuality and that consequence of death, and that death signifying no further pleasure. So when that's all people are thinking about, that's all people care about, and then people receive an articulation, okay, this is no more pleasure, people have to further like process that of like, wait, is this actual? Wait, what? How is that it? How is that? And have to think, what are we talking about? How is this? Why would they, and amidst all the bullshit rationalization and genius pimp talk rationalization, still have to like think about like, wait, how could they say this? What do they know that we don't know? This, that, and the other. How can we use this or whatever? They still have to figure that out to some further satisfactory degree. That's on the pleasure front. Now on the pain front, what we also recognize is there are many people in this world who don't care about pleasure. They don't care about themselves. They don't even care about pain for themselves, but they still love in this world, which is why they're still in it. These are slaves. These are people who have been like, who are beautiful kinfolk, who are loving and empathic kinfolk, who are also genius and intelligent, but at the same time have given up in life, on themselves, and don't give a fuck about anything that happens to themselves, have already experienced torture and affliction severely that we can't even talk about. So they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about you or anybody else. They're experiencing them. They're experiencing already hell at this moment. And one of the only things that they got is love for somebody else, whether it's a child, whether it's a family member, or otherwise. They don't give a fuck about anything else in this life, even themselves. You can threaten them with death, so what the fuck? Don't care. But the reason why they continue doing things to others is because they have a fear that if they don't, whoever those bosses are that got something on them are threatening the people that they do love. And that's why they keep on doing what they do. They don't care about pleasure. They don't even care about pain for themselves. But they have some love in this life, which is why they're still living towards somebody else. And for those kinfolk, that's the reason why we articulate for others' loved ones, and why we include that in that as well, because we recognize that that's a significant factor in the affliction, the ongoing affliction, is the people who are enslaved, who don't want to hurt others, but who are leveraged, who are enslaved to hurt others, and who are further effective because the kinfolk who are employing them don't have the same access that those other kinfolk do, who don't give a fuck about themselves. Genuinely, thoroughly. So that's one of the reasons why you're targeting. We don't. It's not hostility. We're not threatening it ourselves. We are articulating an awareness of cause and effect, so that people can be further sober in recognizing what people are doing and what's happening. So meanwhile, we keep on going. Oh, and so I mentioned before, like at that briefly in one of the initial videos yesterday or day within the past day, like what's the point of like destroying stuff like this? I mean, is that supposed to scare us? Is that supposed to like distract us? Because it does cause some distraction. We're talking about this rather just like a few weeks ago when the brethren stood out here. We talk about that for the next couple of days, because we got to process that instead of doing the stuff that we're supposed to be doing initially. Supposedly we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing in this life, but there's things that we are focusing on doing. So it could be distraction, it could be intimidation, but what's the point of the intimidation? Trying to like scare us to stop us from speaking what we speak, saying truth, or what we understand as truth. People should know better than that. That don't work. Is it to discourage others from connecting with us? And additionally, that might be a thing. Is it kinfolk like grasping at straws and just trying to take shots whilst they're going down, just to feel better about themselves? Is it visible? That's not it. That's the junkiness we got going on. The birds are saying, yo, where's breakfast at? Oh, wait a minute. What is that? Yeah, you got a rice ball out there. Anyways, that's where the sukkah stands right now. So the intention, we plan to keep it up there like that for a couple of days, because just we don't know if the job is finished in terms of people's aggressions. It lets people see what's happening, but that's not necessarily a telltale sign, because it has looked like that in disrepair from our own doing or our own negligence. And actually, that's probably what we should get to in terms of this joint, and maybe wrapping it up with that, and maybe wrapping it up with some further decent cloth. So negligence. The sukkah, it's a beautiful, nearly brand new. The framework, the metal framework is in very strong condition when we receive it. However, during the latter part of the winter, with the snowfall and the melting of the snow, the weight on the roof basically collapsed the roof, and that causes all the framework to bend forward. So it's been damaged because of that, and it stood there for a while in a damaged state just because we're enveloped in other things at that moment. So it looks not the best of things a few months ago by our own doing and by our own negligence. So it don't look the best of things at the moment either, um, by other people's doing. But at the same time, both of those circumstances are our own negligence. Even just the situation that happened yesterday, when it's others who ram it up with their vehicle, we also have to look at what our involvement is in that situation of not being as proactive in one way or another in protecting the sukkah, in attending to the suffering that the people, the brethren, are experiencing who directly do that, who plan for and otherwise. And that's where we go back into that situation of not blaming anybody. So when we say punk, coward, this, that, and the other, that might help us to feel better about ourselves, perhaps, and to feel further valued or whatever by talking about somebody else's fear or whatever. But guess what? That's just another way of clapping back, because it does just articulate what's going on and kind of like diffuse the violence and acknowledge the vulnerability within the violence and the lack of productivity and efficiency within the violence. So it has some purpose in terms of that educational aspect to it, but in actuality, I mean, it's just a lot of clapback. Saying all those words or whatever, venting, that's just clapping back in a different way. Passive aggressive way, kind of, sort of. We're doing it at the scene, to whoever's there, but we're also doing it on a screen. And the whole internet thing, when we're talking about um, um, disagreements and contentions with each other, and doing it through these methodologies, that can be looked at as a form of passive aggressiveness. But like I said, we're doing it on our screen. We're doing it at the scene, amidst, particularly in the past day, amidst it happening, amidst kinfolk running away in their vehicles, and we're not going at others. We're not planning joints at others and hostilities like that. So whatever criticism of our own passive aggressiveness, it's beneficial to recognize the quality of that characteristic being somewhat qualified. Anyways, but that being said, what we do recognize is a further appropriateness to acknowledge and like work on and reconcile is this. Whoever the usual suspects are, whatever the collusion is with the pedophilia and cannibalism, LGBTQ, and any other groups, ultimately everything is from Elohim, the Most High, God, known by many different names beyond all names. Everything is from God. Devil is from God. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a divine purpose. Whatever we're experiencing is exactly what we're supposed to be experiencing. Divinely ordained. We might accept certain things better than other things. Everything is divinely ordained. So it's beneficial for us to even go beyond pointing fingers at any other entity. Oh, it's them, it's them, it's them, it's them. No. It's us. It's the one, and then it's us. So, in acknowledging that, getting some breaths, some stillness, some posture, some meditation, some samadhi, some salat, and otherwise, still got to perform salat. It's a matter of recognizing it's the one, and it is us. So when it's the one, okay, one, what's going on? Why? What have we done? What should we do? And what are we doing? We can talk about dependent origination, that everything we experience is a manifestation, a projection of our actuation. So what have we done? Not even in a punishment, even a karmic sense, but what are we doing to cause this? What are we doing to cause this? We are sending the kinfolk out. This is the theater that we are projecting. All this vlog stuff, this is the theater that I personally am projecting. All the activity is something that I am projecting. Each of us is that in this life. We are projecting the theater around us. We are the theater projectors. So what are we doing? It's helpful to, again, have some stillness, so it's further simple to see that nature and the mechanics of the theater projection. If I do this, ooh, look at that ripple. Haha. Peace and blessings, Mado. If I do that, oh, there's that. That's how that works. Okay. And if I do that, oh, wow. Okay. Ultimately, it's the one. Intermediately, it's us. This is the theater we are projecting. Why? What is the theater that we want? What is it, the theater that we are looking for? Why? What is the theater that we are mad at? Why? What is the theater that gives us peace and calmness? A sense of fulfillment, eternal completion, even beyond our words and our thoughts. What is that theater? What is that theater that is enticing us, that is compelling us, that is gnawing at our concentration and drawing us away from that peace? Why? What is that theater we see in someone else that we want to experience with someone else? That we want to share with someone else? That is some of the consideration for the moment, for this day, as the smile is beginning. Oh, it's so bright now I can hardly see. It's so bright, I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. I can almost sing on key. As part of as part of the susceptibilities of creativity, identifying sequences of and renditions of tunes and keys that are distinct from what people are accustomed. Perhaps. All that being said, all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, blessed love and peace, and Rastafari.